Okay guys, today we're going to be talking about proportions. So we have a problem. Joseph drives 125 miles in 2.5 hours. At the same rate, how far will he be able to travel in 6 hours? Well, in the past, we have used a table to solve this, and we would use it miles and hours. So it'll be 2.5 hours for 125 miles. And we want to know how we're going to get to 6 hours. Well, if I estimate, I know that 2 times 3 is 6, so my answer should be approximately 3 times 125, but I can't do that. I first of all have to go backwards and figure out 1 hour. So I can get from 2.5 to 1 by dividing by 2.5. So I'll do the same thing over here. Now, I have options. I can either work with the number 2.5, or I can start working with a decimal instead. So I know 2.5 equals 2 5/10. So I could do that, and that would help me find my number of miles per 1 hour. Okay, but this chart over here is going to be a lot of extra work when we could actually set it up in a proportion. It'll do the same thing. It'll just be a little bit faster for us. Okay, so a proportion is going to be 2 ratios that are set equal to each other. But 2 ratios, I have this ratio and this ratio. Well, the first ratio that we have is 125 miles in 2.5 hours. So 125 miles in 2, and we already said that was 2 5/10 hours. Now, with proportions, it's very important that we make sure that we label so that we know what numbers we're talking about. So 125 miles is on top, which means my miles will be here, and my hours will be on the bottom again. So it tells me travel in 6 hours. Well, 6 hours goes in the hour section, and since we don't know what this number is, we're going to put a variable there. So I'll use X to represent the number of miles in 6 hours. Okay, so we have a bunch of different ways that we could try to figure this out. We could move this way and figure out what do I multiply by 2 5/10 to get to 6? Well, I would have to divide 6 by 2 5/10 in order to find out what it is that I'm multiplying. And then I would multiply that same number times the top. So I'm going to move my decimal, and I know this becomes 25. So 25 goes into 60 2 times. That's 50. And then add a 0, bring it down. 25 goes into 400 or 100 4 times. So that means I'm going to multiply by 2 4/10 here. So I should do the same thing here, 2 4/10. So 125 times 2 4/10 is going to give me X. $20, 8, 10, it's 5, bring down a 0, 10, 2, 4, 5, 2, and I get, one decimal place, I get 300. So X equals 300 miles. So I know my answer is 300 based on this method. But we could do another method as well. So let's try another one. This time, instead of moving across, we're going to try to move up and down and see if that's going to give us the same answer. Because there are multiple ways to solve proportions, and I want you to recognize that I can go across or I can go up and down. So I always want to point to my variable, so we're going to point towards the X. So my question is, how do I get from 2 5/10 to 125? So what am I going to multiply here? And we'd still follow the same process. I could do 125 divided by 2 5/10, move my decimal. There is no decimal here, so I have to add a 0 before I bring up the decimal. 25 goes into 125 5 times evenly. 5 times 25 is 125. So I have a 0, and I can't forget to bring the 0 here. So it's times 50. So I'm going to multiply 6 times 50, and I get 300 again. So that's 2 methods that we could solve a proportion. Okay, and if neither one of those works out nicely for you, the last method that you should use is cross multiply and divide. So cross multiply and divide is something that you've seen before. 125 miles in 2.5 hours equals x over x number of miles over 6 hours. Cross multiply and divide, we're going to circle the two numbers that are across from each other. So I would take 125 times 6, and I divide by the number that's outside of that, so I would divide by 2 and 5/10. So 125 times 6, and I take that number and divide it by 2 and 5/10, and my answer will still be 300. Okay, so I've shown you 3 different methods. I've shown you 3 different methods. The first one was to go across a proportion, and we call this one the factor of change. So you can find the factor of change going across, or you can also find the factor of change by going up or down. Okay, so you can look across, you can look up and down, and then the other method that you can use is to cross multiply and divide. Okay, so that's called cross multiply and divide. Okay, so I'm going to give you one more. I'm going to give you one where we have a number, and I'm going to just go ahead and label it miles and hours. Okay, this time we're going to take, if I have 12 miles in 1.5 hours, or 1 5/10 hours, how many miles, that means the x or the y, the variable is going to go here, and then how many miles can we go in, we'll do 6 and 5/10 hours. Okay, I would like you to solve this problem, bring this problem back to us tomorrow, and we will talk about that. Use one of your 2 methods. Remember, we can go across, or we can go up and down, or we can cross multiply and divide. Okay, so you have lots of different options here. Okay, so there are 3 methods. Make sure you have those in your notes.